Okay, well, this is Dr. Sangeeta Pati, and we're starting with the top 5 tips to correct nutritional deficiencies and how it relates to hormones and toxicities and the mind and the body. So we're getting started here. Welcome to the webinar, and we're just about full here. So the first thing to think about is that obviously when we're looking at optimizing our health, many of you may be familiar with the fact that there are many areas that you optimize in order to have full restoration of your health. And whether we're talking about somebody who's in overall general good health and is looking to just improve their health, or a 7-year-old with, say, ADD, or a person who has a serious illness like cancer or Alzheimer's, it's always the same 5 basic areas that one needs to optimize. And it turns out that out of these areas, nutrition is a key player in the ability to restore the body back to its optimal state. So obviously we know that when nutrients are missing, things don't look right. It's very easy to see in these plants that something's missing from some of these plants. And if you look at more detail what the studies are showing and what plants look like when they're deficient, here are some plants: phosphate deficient leaf, a potassium deficient leaf, a nitrogen deficient leaf. And here are some plants where grown on the left with excellent nutrition and grown on the right with not excellent nutrition. Same genetics, same lighting, same everything. So nutrition plays a significant role in living plants. It also plays a very significant role in us. And you can see from this very basic chart that there's specific nutrients that are responsible, say, for eye health or heart health or mental and physical energy or optimal digestion. So we know that we need nutrients. We know that each nutrient is important for different function. And there's other things we know. Nutritional deficiencies cause insomnia, weight gain, headache, fatigue, anxiety. If we look at specific nutritional deficiencies that are associated with each of these, you could be very simple and say magnesium deficiency is related to headache, or that a zinc deficiency could be related to fatigue, or that a chromium deficiency could lead to weight gain, or an omega-3 deficiency leading to anxiety. But it isn't as simple as that, because of course we know that all nutrients are important for all functions. That's a very basic comparison. We also know at this point that nutritional deficiencies cause disease. They cause disease of the musculoskeletal system, of the bones. They cause disease of the nervous system, the vascular system, and the intestinal system, the brain, and the organs. So nutritional deficiencies lie at the base of many different diseases because they cause DNA damage. That's the prime start of where nutrient deficiencies start to cause DNA damage. What research has shown is that if you have a nutrient deficiency like zinc or like selenium, you start to have DNA damage almost immediately. But that DNA damage is reversible when one corrects the nutrient deficiency. So that's the good news. Not only can you find out what the nutrient deficiency is, but you can also reverse it with the proper supplementation and food program. Nutrient deficiencies also cause organ damage, and they cause initiation of cancer and ultimately cancer. There's entire books of literature on nutrients and the gene interactions that ultimately lead to cancer. So I'm saying that obviously nutrient deficiencies cause DNA damage, and nutrient supplementation and proper food actually corrects this kind of DNA damage. So how does one do this? A nutritional program should have 3 components. One major component should be the food that you eat. the food that you eat is going to end up being 85% of your nutritional status. That food should be plant-based and superfood dense, and we'll be talking about how to make that happen. There are always some basic supplements that may be involved, a multivitamin with minerals, because as a country we're mineral deficient, which means using mineral salt and as many greens as possible, because those are the richest source of minerals, and safe and pure sources of omega-3. And last but not least would be measurement. Obviously, how much magnesium one person needs and how much another one needs will depend upon what they're absorbing and what they're utilizing. So measurement ends up being a key to a nutritional program, because it's the only way to assess whether the food and the supplements that you're taking are being absorbed and utilized appropriately. That way you can individualize your program to you. The philosophy in any program for your health should be that you gain as much knowledge as you can and choose what's right for you, because knowledge is your power to choose what's right for you. And you congratulate yourself for the things that you do. Do not put too much energy into things that you don't do, because this is the way that we end up having a program that we feel good about. There are 5 basic recommendations and tips that can help you get there. And these include, 1, measuring your nutritional status, eating more plant protein and less animal protein, eating 8 different colors of vegetables, eating organic and or local, adding superfoods. But why? Why are these the basic principles? Let's go into that. Measurement. There are multiple different tests that one can do to measure your nutritional status. The one I'm showing you here is SpectraCell, and this is Spectrox's total antioxidant function. It's a blood test. They grow your cells for weeks and then measure the intracellular level of your antioxidant function. The before here is at 40th percentile, which means out of 100 molecules that are damaging your DNA, this person is able to take care of 40 of them, and after the treatment and after proper nutritional program, they're at 65%. So they're able to take care of 65 out of 100 damaging molecules. Other pieces of this type of measurement include an omega-3 index. We know we're looking for a number above 8%, which reduces the risk of cardiac mortality. And we're looking at B vitamins and other minerals, and you're looking to be in the 75th percentile in all of these. Luckily, this kind of testing, although $1,300 is what the cost is at the moment covered with a copay for most insurances, which is under the $200 range. So this is one simple way of measuring your nutritional status. There are others, and you should ask your healthcare provider how they want to measure your nutritional status. The measurement reflects 3 things. It reflects the adequacy of the food and the supplements that you're taking. It reflects the absorption in your intestinal tract and utilization. If you're under a lot of stress and your nervous system is hyperactive, you'll be using magnesium more than anyone else. If you're an athlete, you'll be using more CoQ10. The most common deficiencies that we find when we start to measure are ones that you will be familiar with. B12 and folate is one of them. Vitamin D is the other one. Iodine, ferritin in women, magnesium, and zinc. These are the top deficiencies that one finds. There are food supplements that one can take for this, and also nutritional supplements that one can take to correct these. For example, magnesium can be acquired from chocolate, dark chocolate especially. Zinc can be acquired from raw sunflower seeds. Iodine can be acquired from kelp and dulse and other forms of seaweed. Vitamin D can be acquired by eating enough plants and exposing yourself to the sun, preferably without clothes on. So there's many ways to correct these, and let's see what some of those are. The second principle out of the 5 is to eat more plants. And this is something which has come to our attention over the last 10 years simply because of one of the largest nutritional studies that came into play, which is called the China study. And then if any of you have Netflix or any kind of cable TV, it turns out that this DVD, Forks Over Knives, is on there and you can take a look at it. But they basically studied the effect of animal proteins on human health. These recommendations are made from doctors in the Cleveland Clinic and have been adapted at Cornell University as a chief methodology of reversing vascular disease, because we know that plant-based diets do reverse vascular disease. And one of the things that they found was the data that is related to milk. And we've always been taught that milk is something that we have to pay a lot of attention to and that it does a body good. But this study threw a very strong light on the suspicion that milk actually was detrimental to the human body. What they found is that more milk, which is 87% casein, equals more cancer cells. 20% casein, 80% proliferation of cancer cells. 5% casein, much lower. 20% gluten, not carcinogenic. The next thing they found is that casein in milk looks like pancreatic cells, and the body cannot tell the difference and starts to attack the pancreas, which means that the more milk you drink as a child, the more chance of having diabetes type 1. Not a good thing. The next thing we found is that more milk equals more fractures. And this is extremely counter to what we've been taught, but this data is clear. And the thought is that this is related to the fact that the more milk we drink, the more acidic the body becomes. And as it becomes more acidic, the bone actually ends up dispersing calcium from the bone to neutralize that acidity. So when we hear these things, obviously the first question you're going to ask is, what do I do to substitute milk or make a change? And obviously, when I said that knowledge is your power to choose what you want to do, what it means is that maybe you'll become more aware and become more sensitive to how much milk intake you have. There are some very good substitutes, and most of them are coming from nuts and seeds, and there are, of course, people who will make it themselves, but at the moment the grocery store is full of them. I would say that the soy-derived milks should be avoided because they're genetically modified, and I'll be telling you a little bit about genetically modified pluses and minuses. There are really no pluses in a little bit. The other thing is that plant-based diets at this time have been shown to be associated with pretty much less diabetes, stroke, autoimmune disease, arthritis, heart attacks, cancer, and neurological disease, and also bone loss. We have successfully seen plant-based programs treat allergies and gastric conditions, fibromyalgia, psoriasis, eczema, arthritis, high blood pressure, cholesterol, high inflammation, and low antioxidant levels. So obviously, plant-based programs are very powerful in the reversal of disease, and of course cancer is one of them. But the chief question that one always gets is, do plants actually have the nutrients that are required to be able to supply the body with what's required? For example, how do you get your protein? If you look at the comparison from the China study book, and you look at 500 calories of plant-based foods and 500 calories of animal-based foods, you're going to find 33 grams of protein and 34 grams of protein. Not really that much different. But the plant-based foods have less cholesterol, less fat, much more vitamin A in the form of beta-carotene, and much more dietary fiber. There's zero dietary fiber in the animal-based foods. They also have much more magnesium and calcium, as you can see at the bottom of this slide, and iron. We always thought that if you're iron deficient, you better start eating some meat. But it turns out that the available iron is 20 milligrams in this same amount as it is 2 milligrams in animal-based foods. So this obviously tells us that plants actually have more bioavailable nutrients. And when we're eating, the idea isn't necessarily to go completely plant-based, but one easy step into this is to try to have your breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snack at least be 50% vegetables. That's a very good step in the right direction. Another one would be to just start to add one new vegetable a month to your palate, because many of us have never really explored different vegetables. The reason for this particular plate is that it balances the sugar highs and the sugar lows that are present that create the conversion of muscle to fat. So as we grow older, we start having sugar highs and sugar lows and conversion of muscle to fat, and that can be controlled by a plate ratio that looks like this for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner, and for snack. A breakfast here could be a cup of oatmeal or steel-cut oats, a egg, and either a smoothie with vegetables in it or a some kind of roasted vegetables. There are many high-protein sources that are available that are plant-based, and of the first picture I showed you of those athletes was simply because these athletes are all completely plant-based. So obviously we know that plants do have enough nutrients to support excellent muscle structure, and these are some of the high-protein sources for plants, which include fermented soy and beans and lentils, and if soy is organic and fermented, it actually is extremely beneficial for you. These are azuki bean salad at the bottom. It's delicious. Excellent protein sources include some of the ones listed here: bee pollen, blue-green algae, hemp seeds. That's a picture of hemp seeds over there. And all kinds of beans and grains and nuts and seeds. So these are things to add to your palate. So the second principle after measurement I mentioned is eat more plants. The third principle is to eat 8 colors of fruits and vegetables per day. And why would we want to do that? If you look at, for example, phytonutrients of different colors, each color supports a different organ. For example, the carotenoids, which are orange, are supporting, which come from all of these plants, support the eye. So the reds support the vascular system along with the blues. So there are specific colors that have specific phytonutrients that happen to gravitate to different organs. The fourth principle here is to eat organic, eat local, or wild harvested. So let's talk a little bit about that and why that is so important, because as you know, this is now a subject of lots of discussion all over. And the first principle to realize is that when you eat organic, you'll avoid pesticides, and we're going to go into that a little bit. You'll avoid genetically modified organisms. You get 40% more nutrients and 30% more antioxidants, and this is counter to the recent media study that showed, which was a small study, that there was no difference between organically grown foods and non-organically grown foods. But the largest study, which I'll show you, actually does show a difference. So the first thing, of course, when we avoid pesticides is that not only are we avoiding the exposure of our body to these toxic pesticides, but we're also avoiding the runoff that's poisoning our waters, our land, our fish, our birds, and everything else. So basically, when we use pesticides, we're not just poisoning ourselves through the vegetables that we eat, but also through the pollution that's created on the earth, because they poison life at every level. And it's very well known that pesticides are neurological toxins and cause cancer and cause all kinds of neurodegenerative and vascular diseases. Pesticides are associated with birth defects through studies, cancers, Parkinson's, heart disease, neurological disease and MS, thyroid diseases. And this question of genetically modified organisms has now actually become quite the political discussion, but let's look at a little bit of what's happened around the world. So the majority of countries that have had the opportunity have actually banned genetically modified organisms. And genetically modified crop just simply means that it's a crop that's been altered to allow it to either resist a certain temperature or grow a different way or resist a certain pest or bug. And if you look around most of the world, the amount of GMO crop is less than 0.1%. In the United States, it's 66% compared to our neighbor in Canada, which is 8.8%. This was on the ballot in Africa. They are in a state of starvation and still have eliminated genetically modified organisms. This is a sample of different kinds of genetically modified potatoes. But the main reason for this is because there have been over 20 studies at this point, and every single study that has been done in an animal model has shown that the result was liver damage, kidney damage, intestinal alteration, cancers, and all of these kind of findings in animals in 100% of studies. Obviously, it's been impossible to study the effect of genetically modified organisms in humans, but if animal studies are showing a 100% rate of modification of the intestinal tract, there's no reason why humans should think that that would be any different. And we have one of the worst health statistics in the world, and look at the map and see where the highest amount of genetically modified organisms are. Crop. The main crop that in the United States you can almost not get except for genetically modified are corn, soy, cotton, and alfalfa. Alfalfa is new. They just passed recently the ability to start to grow that genetically modified. So read your labels. These are things you do not want in your food. As far as organically versus conventional, this was the largest study that has been published in 2001 showing that the organic crop have 86% more chromium, 49% more iodine, 152% more molybdenum, selenium is 372% more. Almost every nutrient across the board is increased. And this is relevant because the USDA has published their studies showing that the 34 top crops in the United States currently, over the last 50 years, have diminished by 60% in nutrient and vitamin content. So obviously we have to do something to make up for that kind of a decrease. If you cannot get organic food, eat local. Why? Simply because, first of all, many times organic food has actually, for example, an organic apple at a grocery store might have sat in a Seattle warehouse for over a year before it actually was shipped across the country and purchased in our grocery store. What that creates is a situation where the nutritional content is slowly decreasing because it's sitting there. And this is well known that the time that a vegetable or a fruit is picked is when it's the highest in terms of energy from the sun and nutrient content. So sometimes when you go to your local farmer's market, you're able to talk to the farmers and realize that they're actually growing things organically and without pesticides, but they haven't taken the trouble to get it stamped. So local farmers of good reputation is a very good place to get your food. Wild harvested is another format, and wild harvested is perfectly fine. It simply just means that the land is not in any kind of agricultural management and it's growing naturally. So the basic principle, the fourth principle, was to eat organic, local, or wild harvested, and it turns out that organic food is never genetically modified. So genetically modified food can be avoided completely by making sure that you're eating organic and mostly locally harvested, but there's certain ones to always avoid, which are the corn, the soy, the alfalfa, and anything with cottonseed oil in it. The fifth principle here is to add superfoods to your plan. And superfoods, there's many books on them, but they basically are a number of different things like hemp seed and aloe and coconut and all kinds of things that are super dense in nutrients. And why would we want to look at superfoods? It's simply because of what I mentioned before, which is the reduced nutrients in our soil. The USDA study that was published in 2002 showed a 50 to 60% reduction of all crop nutrients. The 34 top nutrients, top crops had reduced nutrient values. So obviously this is something which might be because of multiple reasons, but is relevant to our eating. And that's why 50 years ago, those of us who were eating much more nutritious food than now. A lot more attention has to be paid now to what you're eating. As you've noticed, of course, this nutritional issue is affecting our children. The generation behind us seems to be sicker than our generation. So it's clear that we have to pay a lot of attention to this. This is a list of superfoods: raw cacao, which comes from chocolate, hemp seed, goji berry. The more things you eat raw, the better, because raw means the enzymes are active. Raw simply means that it hasn't been heated to above 118 degrees, and this allows the enzymes to stay active. So when you're looking at organic or you're looking at things that may be in bottles, make sure you're looking for both raw and organic. Hemp seed, goji berry, aloe vera, bee pollen, propolis, spirulina, maca, coconut. Coconut's a great one. There's coconut ice cream. There's coconut milk as an alternative to dairy. There's all kinds of coconut products, coconut yogurt now on the market, chlorella, Incan berries, dulse, kelp, turmeric. The nutritional program, as I mentioned, does have 3 components: measurement, food, and supplements. And I haven't mentioned anything about supplements. I've given you the top 5 tips, but let me tell you a little bit about supplements at this time. So there are 2 basic supplements that you pretty much should consider utilizing, especially if the food program is not strong. At the end of the day, the bioavailability from food is higher than supplements, but because of the way we eat and the status of our soil, supplements always have some kind of role, but they should be minimal. For example, a multivitamin, mineral, and a fish oil. And there's also some selection criteria for supplements. They should have vegetable capsules. You don't want dyes or preservatives. You don't want fillers. And if you look at what Dateline and New York Times and even Consumer Reports has now published, it's very clear that the majority of the supplements, over 95% of them in the United States, are contaminated with heavy metals. So you need to have spectrophotometric testing, which is a light form of testing, in order to clear the raw materials and make sure that they're free of these kind of things. You always want glass bottles, or if it's plastic, you want bisphenol A free and phthalate free bottles. You do not want heat seal on your bottles, because heat alters the temperature of the capsules and leaches the plastics into your products. The best way to pick your supplements is to ask your healthcare provider to measure the supplement, your nutrition levels, and recommend a nutritional program which has the food component, the supplement component, and the measurement component in it, so that it will be individualized for your individual needs. So to go over the 5 basic principles again, measuring your nutritional status is 1, eating more plants and less protein is the other, eating 8 different colors of vegetables, organic or local, and I would tell you that the future holds in it that we grow our own. So becoming familiar with how to grow things is important. I started this process about 5 years ago and ended up failing 3 years in a row, until last year I finally ended up with the secret formula for my very pot-based garden, which ended up being in little containers, and I got more vegetables than I could have even sold in a farmer's market on a daily basis in a very small area. So it turns out that with careful planning, you can actually end up growing a lot of your own stuff and controlling a lot of the factors that I talked about. And when you pick it from your garden and eat it, you're obviously at a whole different level of the kind of energy you're getting. And of course, the 5th principle is to add the superfoods. But these are things that are the basic principles, but how does one actually make it happen? So one principle is that whatever you do, the whole family should start to become nutritionally savvy. And the importance of what people eat and what you're eating at the home should be part of something that everybody is involved in, food preparation and eating together. The second part is a little bit of preparation. Clearly, when we eat at the last minute, it's extremely difficult to think about what it is that would be the best thing to eat. So preparation in terms of thinking about what kind of recipes you want and picking things that are delicious, because eating should be pleasurable. Any changes you make them one step at a time. You pick a few recipes that look like they're going to suit what you like, and you shop in the grocery store or the farmer's market. And I like to suggest to people that they add one new vegetable per month. And you can see that this particular selection is a lot of peppers of different colors. So this is one form of vegetable that people could add per month. And it turns out that in this culture, we eat a lot fewer varieties of vegetables than most cultures. So when one starts to do this, you'll find that your palate will increase and the family's palate will increase, and you'll figure out what you like and what you don't like. You're always aiming for about 50% vegetables in the plate. And of course, this knowledge gives you the power to make informed decisions about what you're doing and to congratulate yourself for everything you do. And I think that most people who start on this journey continue it. It's not something that you expect to do overnight. It's something you expect to do over a 6 to 12 month period of time to get to the point that you want to be at. I've included a few different books that could help, and these will be on the website of MD Prescriptives and of your doctor's offices. And this is now the end of our slideshow. And I can see that there are some questions, and I'd like to go ahead and take some questions right now. Okay, so one of the things I had mentioned about the magnesium coming from dark chocolate, it turns out that magnesium and zinc and many other minerals are extremely high in dark chocolate. So it is true that it's not just a square of dark chocolate. I actually would recommend almost a half a bar of organic raw chocolate a day, and if you can get it raw, then you definitely have something that's better than a cooked chocolate, because you have live enzymes, and it turns out that raw chocolate is actually extremely good tasting. So I think that it is very underutilized, and you can either get a raw cacao in a powder form, but I always tell people that chocolate actually increases the metabolic burning, so it's one very good way to get a lot of minerals. Another way to get minerals in your food is to add salts that are of different colors. Pink is the one I like because pink salt has 92 minerals, but you can also use anything but white salt with sodium and chlorine. Black salt, brown salt, dirty looking salt, those are the natural salts. And the other best source for minerals is greens. So if you find yourself at a point where the plants that you're eating might not be adding up, sometimes what I'll do is just take a greens powder and put it in a glass of water, and it turns out that they really just don't taste very bad. Or you can put it with a little bit of natural juice and do that to at least get the minerals in, because that's how you raise the pH, and that's how you reduce the toxic load in the body. It turns out that plants and greens bind heavy metals, so it's a major method of detoxifying the body. So another question that we have is, are there other methods of measuring your nutritional status? One of the methods is just by measuring your blood serum levels, which are measurable by Quest or LabCorp or any of the regular labs that you would go to. These will give you serum levels as opposed to functional intracellular levels, but they're still going to give you some indication. You can't measure all nutrients this way, but vitamin D, magnesium, iron, you can measure iodine in the urine, which is covered by insurances. There's many nutrients and minerals that you can measure in regular blood tests. The more accurate way to measure them, though, is intracellularly or through urine testing. So there's many different ways of testing. The basic principle is that one should test. So that's going to be the questions that we're going to take for this evening. And we very much are very happy that you have joined us for this webinar and look forward to your attendance in our next webinar, which will be related to how you remove the toxic load, the top 5 tips to reducing the toxic load in your body. And you have a wonderful, nutritious evening.